Hey everyone, it's Solo. Gonna be looking at TL versus TES. Gonna give some like reactions, gonna give a little bit of the analyst drafting play, all of that. I think to set the stage, TL, obviously being NA first seed, coming into the tournament, month of boot camp. I'm not sure everyone, expectations versus TES, the second best China team, almost won their championship. I think expectations are like, we just want to give a good performance, kind of the NA participation. Just show that, we can at least compete, give a little bit of hope, maybe take a game. So we go into it. We'll take a look at the draft first. I think that overall performance, not great. Players could have played better. I think Balling especially got really gapped. But I cannot speak enough about how much of a problem I think these drafts are. And we'll take it from the beginning. Going into game one. Both teams banning triple here. Triple AD carry ban. And we have the triple balling ban or mid ban. APA obviously scaring Cream. All right, as basically this tournament has come down to this. 4 AD carries are tier 1. We have Senna, Varus, Kalista, and Lucian are the 4 best AD carries. Everything else is about a tier below. A lot of teams just trade them because obviously 4 AD carries. You don't want to ban 3 and then leave 1 up. And if you ban 3, the other team usually bans 1. So we go into the trade, and we go into the Kalista trade. Now, Jan and TL have not really been that big of Kalista players. They've played about 3-ish games throughout the season. And in part, largely because Core has mostly played melee champs. Like the champs that are good with Kalista this season have been Ashe, have been Renata, have been Rumble coming lately. And Core doesn't play any of them. And I mean, here would be an opportunity really to take the Rumble and do a little bit of a flex pick. So we miss out on that. And even historically, if we take a look at Core with the champs that would be good with Kalista, we have Renata. One of his lowest win rates, 28%. Even his Ashe, we've only played 4 games, and we've only won 1 of them. And that one, I think, being with, I'm not even sure that was with Kalista. It might have been with Jhin. Regardless, these are not really his preferred picks. Obviously, Nautilus is something he'd like, or Rel, which are okay this tournament. But definitely not on the same power level. And if you want to play this lane versus Lucian Nami, and Lucian Nami, I might add, has been the strongest bot lane, probably the strongest bot lane this tournament. They've only lost maybe 1 game. It's basically like 10-1 at this point. Extremely strong. And Jackie Love Maiko have been probably the best globally. So very strange that we come to this. We know that this is going to be the answer as the TL side, right? Picking Kalista, they're obviously going to match with the Lucian Nami. So I'm already off the base. Not a big fan so far. We get into the APA Tristana, which has been his 4th pick pretty much this whole entire season. Now, I'm not the biggest APA Tristana fan just because I don't necessarily think Tristana is that great, and I don't think he's that great on it. So I'm a little disappointed that we spent the boot camp and we don't have an Azir, an Orianna, another type of like mage, which I feel like he's definitely been better at because his 3 champs are all mages. And like I said, I think Rumble pick on 3rd. Maokai's not really that big of a prio. This way we get a little bit of a flex. Like, I think Rumble's not that hard of a champion. I think Core should be able to play Rumble. It's melee champ. It's not like stylistically that different from a lot of the stuff he does play. Something like Tarek or something like these kind of like mid-range champs, I don't think are that difficult. And then we have this flex pick with the damage spread being really good. Obviously, Impact can play a top. We get into the 4-5. And, I think that, like I said, he's not that good at Renata. I like the Cassante pick. I don't really get leaving up Sejuani as opposed to banning it instead of Viego. Mostly because if you're going to go into Renata, like, look at the compositions and think about what does Renata do? You're playing against pretty much all range champs, so your ultimate is not going to be that useful. And they're all very non-committal range champs, too. Even the engage with the Sejuani isn't going to be like super dive heavy, so you're not gonna get that value. I feel like if they're Viego, at least you get some value from your like ultimate and your E ability, and you can even like get them off of your carries. So I think that's the big thing in this draft. And then we get into the gameplay, and this is what I'm talking about. Part of it's draft, part of it's gameplay, because when we come to situations like this, you're coming on the push out. TES is playing very aggressive. We need to get a kill here. We need to get sums. And it's the perfect opportunity. Renata needs to be able to like flash Q, like pull the Lucian, get his cleanse, Maokai needs to flash stun him, but instead we waste our core, wastes his Q, and it becomes this complete disaster where we're using sums and we don't even get kill. We don't even get their sums. And we wasted completely wasted our Maokai's time. Now they get the Pharaoh. Now they get the grubs for free, which and we lose a little bit of tempo. And then when we go into the switch into the lanes, because we have no sums, because we're behind, easy 2v2 kill. I mean, I wouldn't even say they outplayed them. I mean, they're basically up a level and they just right click them to death. And the game is kind of over. I mean, how can you win at this point? Lucian's accelerated. He's going to get one item. Your engage is very poor. It's basically just Maokai, but we have the cleanse to counter it. Not to mention the fact that Sejuani can just basically just tank the ultimate, and she's not going to die because you're very short range with Tristana and Callista. And the Wei and the Lucian ulti, long range, going to be able to poke you out and do a lot of damage to you. So off the bat, not tough, but trust me, it gets worse because we get into game 2 and we go with the double dragon comp. And this has been something that TL is very... They really like this double dragon comp. And it did really well in playoffs. But the difference is Smolder was broken as fuck when it came to playoffs. And we pick it here. And one of the things to start out with is Senna versus Smolder. Even when Smolder was broken, the idea was being that it's almost an even trade because Senna... You know, Smolder's not going to do anything in lane. He's very weak early, so Senna's going to get a lot of stacks. And even when Smolder pops off and he gets his full stacks and he gets his execute, the Senna can basically outrange the team enough that she can carry in the late game. It's like, I think a lot of people thought of it as basically an even trade. I think it's clear that Smolder is obviously better, or was better before he got nerfed. But at the end of the day, it was like almost an even trade. And now with Smolder nerfed quite a lot, I can't imagine why you would think that this is a positive trade. And I do want to commend TES because they had really good answers to this draft. I think picking Xin Zhao really negates these kind of like big AoE teamfight ultimates like the Asol, like the Rumble, like the Smolder. Because he can go in, do damage, ultimate, and he takes none of that long range damage, which is really important. And I think even bigger... and I will be interested to see if this continues during the tournament. I think the Corki is a massive counter to the Asol because one of Aurelion Sol's biggest advantages is his ultimate is so warping as far as the team fights. And even though he's this hyperscaling champion, when you get into second dragon and he has the mega ulti, he might as well be the strongest person on the map, even though he's still trying to scale. And so we kind of can equalize that with the Corki package and do something very similar where you have, instead of being in a disparity of like, oh, how are we going to play around Aurelion Sol ulti? Now it's like we have package, Aurelion Sol ulti and package are very similar in power. We have the poke advantage and we have similar scaling. So I think, and you have better side laning throughout the whole entire a match with Corki. So I actually really, really like this as kind of like an answer to Aurelion Sol. And they did this in the third game as well. I'll be very curious to see how the rest of the tournament goes. And see what if this continues to be the trend. And I think lastly, a little bit of a mistake off TL's side. They go into this 4-5. Twisted Fate is still up. TF has been very good this tournament. Just kind of a menace, long range. It works really well in this comp because you just gold card whoever's in front, who can tank the gold card as well as the poke that's going to follow. And so they banned the Jax. And partially, I think they banned Jax because they don't want Umti to play it in jungle, and they don't want it to be a flex pick on 4. But I think as soon as you see the Jax pick, we need to drop the LeBlanc, and we need to ban TF. Because there are no really answers to TF in this comp. They took the Ornn. Ornn is, I think, very good against TF. Just stylistically. I think you could play Cassante, but you would need to take Sedge here. If we're going to pick Cassante, I think we have to pick Sedge. And even if we take Cassante, I don't really know how much... It seems difficult to still deal with all this range. Because Cassante's not really poke. Or sorry, Cassante's not really engage. But I do think Sedge Cassante does kind of save the draft a little bit. But as it stands, I don't understand why we're picking Rek'Sai. This is the other thing. This is the only Rek'Sai game in the whole entire tournament. This is the only Smolder game in the whole entire tournament. And we'll see in a little bit, this is the only Jhin game in the whole entire tournament. So we're first timing champions. I don't know what kind of boot camp they're having. I don't know what kind of scrims they're having, but I think it's pretty unacceptable to go into a tournament where there's kind of an established meta and just be first timing champions. I don't know. I don't really see it, and I think Rek'Sai especially is just particularly useless because what does he do versus this comp? I mean, he can't kill anybody on the enemy team. He kind of just runs around, and unless you're gonna like turbo stomp mid early game with the Rumble, and maybe that was the plan to just cap the TF, and they tried to do that in the game. But my problem with the Rumble into the TF especially, and you'll see this in some of the plays, it is so hard to not die. It's very easy to die. And yeah, I mean, we had a Impact kills himself in some of these plays. He kills himself here when he could just be warding. But this game, it is just so difficult to not die as the Rumble side. Even when we're playing safe, even when we think we're like in an okay opportunity, we're trying to get the push out. We die to pretty much anything. And I think that's the number one problem, that as soon as the TF gets Merc Treads, we're never killing him. And then at any point that the jungler or any other character is on our side of the screen, we basically died to them. And that's the biggest issue. And then on the flip side of the map, we have this extremely vulnerable bot lane. So we have to cover top, right? Because TF plus Xin Zhao or TF plus Corki can kill Rumble at any point. But on the other side, we have our TL team, who, this is obviously a player problem where we're fighting to the death when our jungler is on the opposite side of the map. Our jungler's over here and their jungler's bot lane. And yes, we're taking this like fight to the death right now, right? You know, this is an issue, but it's also like a compositional issue where we have both side lanes that are super vulnerable and a mid laner who's just completely farm heavy. And they did this again later on in the game. It's just extremely difficult, I think, at any point during this to not die in the side lanes. And even in a comp where if you think well, maybe if we get the 3 items and Smolder gets stacked up, I realistically don't think you're going to win this game even more so. I think that the range, who can walk up? Who can walk up? Anytime you walk up, gold card. Let's see. If gold card's this guy's dead, gold card 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 this guy's dead. What is the answer? And what's the engage angle? We're just gonna drop the Rumble ulti. Like, I guess we can drop all of our ultis and try to kill them, but who are we killing? We can't kill this guy. This guy's package can't kill him. Maybe we could kill Senna, but she's going to be 700 a range away. And so it's not exactly as easy as just being kill the Senna, you know? Whereas if you show up anywhere in if you show up in gold card range, you basically just get deleted. And so we get to the end of this with the biggest, most egregious part of all, which is the Jhin. I mean, everybody's talking about it. The Jhin pick. And so the logic is, oh, we can take the Nami away, and even though that is like, people have thought about this, and I've talked to many teams about this before, taking Nami away from the Lucian. The only time I've heard I think it can ever work is if you pick the Draven. If you pick the Draven, you do have a chance to snowball the Draven and get ahead and make the Lucian a little bit more useless. And I will say, even though Milio is worse than Nami, I don't think it's that warping of the strategy enough to warrant taking away the Nami. At the least, it's like marginally worse, and only in the sense that you have less offensive prowess, but your defense is way better. Because Milio more of like a peeling champ, whereas Nami is like more of an offensive champ. And I think that even though, you know, it is worse, it's just such a small margin, it shouldn't really matter. Not to mention, I do think Milio Corki is just better than Milio Nami, so I don't know. It's not even that much of a difference. So as soon as they pick Jhin, I mean, obviously they take Cassante. Because Jhin will never kill Cassante. It's just never going to happen. And we get into this 4-5. They don't answer the Corki. I don't know why they don't ban it, but I don't think it really matters on the mid picks. I mean, these 3 alone, the draft is just over, I think. I don't think there's anything that can really solve the problem of what is Jhin gonna do this game exactly? And it's almost perfect that they ended off with the Renekton 5P, a champ that has been one of the worst this tournament. We could take a look here. And like I said before, Lucian has won pretty much every game. And Renekton has pretty much lost every game. Renekton being 1-7 so far. I think he's only won one game early in the tournament, so one of the worst picks. And also, like, fundamentally picking Renekton, and you got to think about it in drafts a lot of the times. You got to think about, like, what does a champion do? Like, in a vacuum, a champion can work in a lot of scenarios. But when it comes to specific drafts, you have to ask yourself, like, what does Renekton do, for instance? It's like Renekton wins lane, okay, but he can win lane against Cassante. And then, okay, maybe he gets, like, a marginal lead. And then what does he do? He flashes onto the carry and he stuns them, right? Okay, well, you can't flash onto a carry because Milio will just ulti and then he doesn't get stunned. And then he gets knocked back, and then, like, what does he do? And there lies the problem where we're picking a champ that just doesn't work against what they have already. So it's only perfect that they pick the Jhin absolutely awful into the meta and everything they can have. And then they finish it off with the Renekton. And you know a game's over because when you watch something and once the Lucian gets one kill, you already know the game is over. The game is just over. The Lucian has one kill and he's ahead. And even though it's 200 gold lead, we all just know that the game is over at this point. The Lucian is going to take over. And they're not going to have any answer to him because realistically, you know, what can they do? They don't have any real win con. And so overall, like, I do want to say that the players didn't play that well, but I think it's such an indictment to it's more of an indictment onto the coaching staff in the draft, to the prep, to go out there and have 3 drafts that I think are aggressively getting worse, and also just, like, some of the worst of the tournament. And I think this tournament has shown just how much proper prep and draft matters when we see teams being competitive against better competition just because they pick something that works and is smart and is effective. And I think that they need to, unless they change their draft and they change their plan, they're gonna just completely, they might even go winless in the tournament. So I want to see them do well. I hope they can get it together by next week. And if you like this content so far, then, you know, like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. There'll be more to come.